recording. All right, there we are. So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. We have another weekly episode of the Cash Flow Empire live podcast. I'm a co-host, Eddie Esparza, and joining me we have Willie Henriquez.
Hey, how you guys doing? This is our weekly Tuesday call where we talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly. And today we have a special guest, Jon Lopez. So a little bit about Jon. We met over social media. We didn't even know each other, right? So we both, he posted for his 9 doors down, and I post on my regular profile, and we kept messing each other. And we just out of nowhere, like, hey, let's get on call. So then we got on call, and we shared each other's story, and really connected well. And then we actually met him at, like Eddie was saying a little bit earlier, at Race Fest, where we connected more. So I'm gonna give the floor to him right now. Introduce yourself, Jon.
Yeah, absolutely. First and foremost, thank you guys for having me. I know we were supposed to try to have this a couple of weeks ago, so I'm fortunate that I'm finally on. But a little bit about myself, man. Jon Lopez, born and raised in the Bay Area of California. I currently reside in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'm a managing partner of 9 Doors Down. We have an opportunity fund. We're a 506B fund, and we invest in multifamily and self-storages, and we look for opportunities where we could 2x our capital in 3 to 5 years. And we co-GP, we JV, we sponsor deals, and we also do a lot of fund of funds.
So before accomplishing all this, how did you get into real estate? Like, tell us a little bit more about Jon, the person.
Yeah, this goes back to 2009. I was living out in Los Angeles with my wife, and the market took a tank in 07, 08, right? And my parents, they told us, we think you should buy a house. And I didn't know anything about equity. I didn't know anything about real estate, but immediately I was already thinking of how can I lower my mortgage, right? And the term house hacking was not around. But even before escrow even closed, we were already lining up, like, some cousins and relatives of ours to rent out a couple rooms of ours. So it reduced our mortgage significantly. So that was 09. 2011 rolls around. My dad had his first round of cancer. So we decided to move back up to the Bay Area. So we were there for not even a full year. It was just like 10, 11 months. But it was during that time that I started to learn how to communicate with property managers, how to gauge the market rents, how to deal with just making decisions on the property without me having to directly talk to my tenants. Because I made that clear from the start. I was like, I don't want to deal with those 3 a.m. Toilet calls. But during that time, equity started the property started to appreciate. I didn't know anything about equity, guys. I just remember a buddy of mine pulled up Zillow, and so we bought the house for like 317,000. It was now up to like 400,000. And I was sitting there, I'm like, so I just sat on this property for 2 years. I didn't do anything. I didn't do any crazy rehab. I mean, it's already appreciating. And fast forward to like 2015, I now start to get a little savvy by doing a little refi on that property. So we did a cash out refi, and then we bought our second single family, which was our primary home, also in Los Angeles, and we bought that house. Fast forward to 2019, 2020, I now start to use the equity that's on my second home. And so with that, I started paying attention that both houses are now doubling up in California equity. And when COVID kicked, everyone's working from home. I started working from home, and it was probably that June or July. I remember calling Anthony, my partner Anthony, and telling my wife, I was like, we should have like a little get together. I don't care if you guys wear 20 masks. I don't care if you guys are 100 yards away. It's like I wanna get with each other. And then Anthony was already he started dabbling into multifamily in like 2016, 2017. And I knew he had a Bullhead City, Arizona single family property that he was selling before COVID hit. So I'm smoking tri-tip, right? I got the tongs in my hand, And then I'm asking him, oh, what'd you do? Did you 1031 to get into a larger home? And he said, no, I got into apartments. And I was like, oh, cool. I was like, how many units? And then that guy, that guy said 163 units. And that moment on, I dropped my tongs and I was like, what the F? How did you afford the down payment? Did you partner up with people? Where was this at? Like, why'd you make that transition? That's a big jump. And like, I had so many questions. Like, my life literally just changed on that day. And all of 2020, I just absorbed myself with podcasts and talking to people that was like into investments, not necessarily even real estate, but just like the growth mindset. And then 2021 rolls around. That's when we started taking action. We sold one property. We rolled it over into our first 9-unit apartment in Tucson, hence the name Nine Doors Down. And in the rest of it, I individually LP'd into an operator in Phoenix. So I took like $100,000 and I just LP'd, right? Because I wanted to learn how the operators communicated with me, so that way eventually maybe this was something for me. I could take these traits and pass it along. Second property was up for sale later that summer, and we sell it for and this time around we rolled it over into a 20-unit apartment also in Tucson, Arizona. But then we were also able to purchase our house here in Las Vegas with no more mortgage, which is like a big relief. Fast forward maybe, I don't know, that July, well, a few months before I moved to Las Vegas, so I moved here September of 2021. This is probably like July of 2021. Anthony goes, hey, we have a self-storage and I think we should go for this. It's 439 units. It's in Galveston, Texas. It was an opportunity to co-GP. And it was a $10.5 million deal, and the equity raise was $4.5 million. I'm not gonna lie, my first reply was, I'm not ready for this. I've never asked for $50,000 from an investor. I was like, I don't know if I could do this. But eventually I got talked into it. I've said yes. And the main reason why we said yes was we knew that if we were not able to raise this capital, we could still learn from it, apply to future deals, right? Little did I know that 2021 was, it was a year filled with dry powder. And we raised that capital in just 2.5 weeks. And I was this close to just saying no to the deal altogether. So that deal rolls along, and that property closed in February of 2023. No, 2022. But when that closed, we knew we had a really good problem at hand. Because of the year of the dry powder, we actually had over $1 million of oversubscriptions. It was a combination of people not replying back to our calls, emails, texts, or whatever. But we knew we did not have an asset. We weren't working on any deals whatsoever. Go ahead, Willie.
Was this family and friends or just strangers?
Which one?
For your for this first capital raise?
Oh, well, it's good friends with Anthony. So they met each other at meetups out in Los Angeles. So Radiant Storage is operator, but when that deal closed, we didn't have a deal, but we had $1 million. And Anthony and I, we both individually invested as an LPs to an operator in Phoenix. So we literally just called our point of contact there. It was like, hey, I know you're working on this deal. It's going to be closing in July. We're thinking about opening up a fund to literally just take about close to $1 million and take it as an LP. We didn't know the term fund of funds just yet, but because of that, we were able to negotiate. At that time, it was an 80-10 split with an 8% pref. And we were like, this is like, I think we should like look into this further, because, it's not our credit that's on the line. We get to diversify our portfolio as well as our investor portfolio, and we still get a piece of the pie, and we get to build on our brand. And sure enough, our fund goes live in June as a 506B, and we're still 506B. We don't have any plans on going to 506C. But yeah, we deployed close to $1 million into that deal, and then that was our first experience as a fund of a fund. And ever since then, it's just one opportunity just kind of leads to another. You start to meet good people at meetups you host, events that you go to. you start to learn more, you start to learn stuff, learn terms that you've never heard of before, and you kind of just take action, man. Just take action. So, but in a nutshell, that was a fast forward story of the Nine Doors Down story.
When I heard that story of you, you're smoking the tri-tip, and then you're expecting a larger, probably a duplex or a larger single family, and they
Yeah.
tell you 163 units. I don't know why when you told me that story, like I just pictured you like trying to figure out what's going on here. What type of hack is this?
And then that it was that moment I was like, okay, he has a hot hand. I need to learn from this guy. And the good thing is Anthony, him and his wife has known my wife, since middle school. So entrepreneurship was always under my nose. They've always tried to get me to dabble into it, but I was so comfortable in my W-2 in the telecom industry, so I never really had to dive into it. It wasn't until I fully had the entrepreneur mindset when I got laid off in New Year's Eve going into 2022. That's when for me, I was like, I need to make a decision here. Like I could just easily go back to get another sales job, be another director. I could probably land something in 30, 60 days. But I decided at that time, I'm gonna take a chance. And the story's still being written, but it very well could be the best thing that happened to me was just being laid off.
Yeah, I've experienced that as well, being laid off due to COVID, and a lot of things run through your mind. What was your initial reaction? And then, because the mindset kind of plays tricks on you, right? So what was it that was going through your head? And then ultimately you decided to head down this route. But what was it initially that went through your head? Some of the questions, some of the troubles?
Yeah, so when I got laid off, the first thing that I thought of was like, man, we've only been in Las Vegas for 3 months, and like I thought that New Year's Eve call was to congratulate us. Hey, let's get excited for Q1 of next year, yada yada yada, right? But the immediately I was thinking to myself, I was like, well, I'm gonna have to just fake it till I make it for my kids and my wife. I want them to have a good, an experience, because I remember that New Year's Eve it fell on a Friday, and so New Year's Eve was on a Saturday. And then so Saturday, Sunday, Monday, I was feeling pretty low. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. But that Tuesday morning, I remember just waking up and I was like, F it, man. I was like, we've already started planting seeds. I got an experience of like, just being an LP. I see how they're communicating. I know the powers of real estate. Let's see how far we can take this bad boy now. And so, it was that morning decision for me. I was like, it was either be a victim or, be a warrior and push through. And I chose to push through.
So I have a question, right? So your first deal, big deal, was the storage unit, right?
Self-storage. Yes.
Why did you guys choose self storage, right? And how did you guys vet those operators? What made you work with those guys?
Yeah. So those guys, Anthony, he actually JV'd into another self-storage property prior to that deal, so he already had experience with them. And I've already met like one of the guys. So obviously I didn't know him too well, but I met him. But self-storage, specifically, like I call multifamily a sexy business, whereas self-storage I call it a sticky business, because due diligence, it's so much simpler than multifamily, right? There's maybe one or two sets of toilets that's on the whole property, so you're not dealing with a bunch of plumbing. And the main things with self storage is like, are the gates opening? Are they shutting? Are the locks working? And when we look for self storages, we look for those that have little to no internet presence, which is like like a mom and pop that has had that property for 30, 40 years. Rents reflect from like 10, 15 years ago, because there's really no need for them to increase it. And that tells us that we could go in there and we could add value by turning it to more and more of a unmanned operation. You're still gonna have employees, but instead of having like 3 or 4 employees that's raking in like 30 grand a year, we can now just scale it back to maybe just one or maybe just 2 part-time employees and a security guard. But those are the one strengths with self-storage versus multifamily. Not and also, if you, when you're raising rents to market value, like say you hold the property for a couple of years and now the market is now dictating a $15 increase or even a 20, it's not a big dent on people's pocketbooks. So a lot of times they end up just paying the increase, because if they were to pack up their things, haul it to another self-storage just like 3-4 miles away, they're still going to be paying the same amount, because we're going with the market. But multifamily, I like multifamily because that's the foundation. Is like the people need a place to stay no matter what. Self-storage is a spillover of people's whether they're renting or they own a business, or they own their own house.
And this is Lamar. I have a quick question. You said low internet. Are you just talking about like the marketing presence of
Yeah,
the storage facility?
yeah. So very either no internet exposure or very little, because
Okay.
that tells us that they haven't really spent money on the marketing, and they're thinking the old ways, like word of mouth, and their mortgage is so low that they don't have a pressure to really increase the rents.
Yeah. And what was the occupancy of that when you purchased it?
When we on that property, it was so that was we bought it from a developer, and it was at that time we got it at 65 occupancy, and there's also a restaurant on the very top floor, and we actually held a meetup there about a month ago. But now we're sitting at like 90, between like 92 and 95% occupancy. We don't You don't really want to be at 100%, because that tells you that like your rents are low, maybe too low.
Mhm. Thank you.
So I want to talk about the power of relations, right? Can you mention, because when we talked about, right, your wife partnered up with a wedding planner for this for the upstairs. So could you talk a little bit about that? And
Yeah,
how
man.
this planner?
Yeah, so that rooftop, so the rent there is 12,000, it was 12,000 a month. And we went a good amount of months, man, where the self-storage itself was performing well, right? The occupancy is up there, but the upstairs we're losing out on the NOI. And Anthony had a bright idea of bringing my wife along, right? So she has experience. She coordinates weddings, event planning. She does concert series out here in Las Vegas called Mahalo Hollow, and we thought it'd be a good idea for her to take a stab at it, because it also it allows her to expand even further east, now going to Texas. And luckily she found partners out there in the Houston Galveston area, where now they're just doing a joint venture on like wedding operations and special events and catering and things like that. And while that's happening, she gets to make money off of that. But also on the investor side, we know our rents are now going to be taken care of, because that $12,000 gap is now, you could be stretched out even further now. But
That is,
relationships is everything, man. Like this, it's probably so cliche in our world, but it's such a team sport, man.
I was just going to mention that's that was very out of the box thinking. You saw that there was a void there. There was the idea of kind of filling it up, obviously to get the rent, and you brought family in, you guys are working hand in hand. Um, and that's awesome. Like I think when you're in this business, you always obviously you have a business plan, and the plan is executed, right? But it doesn't always go according to plan. Um, how do you kind of like shift? How do you if something's going wrong? What goes through like your mindset or the decision process to kind of say, hey, we need to kind of shift here?
I think if you were to ask me this question like prior to like 2020, I would get paralyzed. I don't even know if I'm going to step towards to like fact finding, right? But now it's like, okay, if there's a problem, what's the solution? That's the first thing that we think of, is like, okay, how can we solve this? We don't want to dwell on it. We don't want to continue the issue, but like, when there's a problem, there's gonna be an opportunity, and only a certain set of eyes can see that opportunity. And for us, it kind of just made sense. It was a restaurant. It was also an event space. My wife does that. Let's give it a shot. The worst thing that can happen is we go back to square one, and we're now leasing that up to another restaurant or something.
That's awesome, man. That's I know we're talking about the self-storage here. You're saying this is a sticky business. You kind of answered this already, but what do you like better between like multifamily and storage from, maybe a return standpoint, but then also like from a maintenance standpoint?
From the return standpoint, it's very similar. The entry points though on self-storage is a tad bit lower, right? The advantage of it is, you don't some self-storage don't even have a toilet, so you're not worried about plumbing issues, right? But at the same time, like I know with multifamily, I'm solving more of an immediate problem, right? And multifamilies, it's I think the demand for it and the demand for renting anything is just going to increase over time. It's harder and harder for the middle class American, especially here on the West Coast and like California, the home state where I come from. Like it's I have cousins and people who just graduated college or just entering the workforce or they've had a good job for like 3-4 years. Average home now in California, I want to say the last time I checked was like 1.2 million, and that's it's like how could you even afford that? And at the same token, at that 1.2 million, you could probably snatch yourself up like a little 12 to 15 unit property in like Texas or Arizona, have that cash flow while you continue to rent your apartment or house. And if your house goes up by 10% in rents over year, because it's all relative, your properties are gonna increase by that percentage amount. So, I think we're gonna see more and more opportunities like that. Grant Cardone talks about all the time, and I definitely believe in it. And if my situation is a little abnormal where I no longer have a mortgage in my home here in Las Vegas, but if I had to enter another mortgage and I couldn't cash out on anything, I'm probably just gonna rent for the rest of my life.
That's a great way to kind of view things. You're taking a look at a single family 1.2, might as well just take it to the neighboring state and
Yeah.
get yourself like 10 units, right?
Yeah, yeah, and get a K1s out of it,
Yeah.
get some cash flow, and you still got the appreciation and for me, I just think it just makes it's a much better business decision. Now, if this was like 15, 20 years ago, I probably would have been like my parents, no, get your own house, live the American dream, have your pension and all that. But as time moved on, it's that's something I'm not counting on is the pension and Social Security. I'd rather create that for my own.
Who knows if it'll still be here?
Yeah, because I think the last time I heard was like you're gonna be 75 by the time you get your pension. Like I don't want to wait till I don't even know if I'm gonna be around at 75.
Yeah, I think definitely COVID and a lot of what's been happening and not even just our in the US, but all over the country, just kind of just tossed a huge wrench in how we see things.
It
But
did.
we have a quick question from Luis, Mr. Guatemala. So the question is, what percentage is normal for self-storage? I'm assuming that's a like a expense ratio, like the percentage of expenses. Okay, to operate the entire property, a C or a B class property. So
Um,
what's
I think last time I checked, I think our expense was around 40%. Yeah. So it's what's the average for multifamily? Like it's a little like 45, 50 or something like that for multifamily.
yeah, anywhere from like 45 to 55,
Yeah.
depending the vintage.
Yeah, so the entry point with self-storage is it's slightly less because it's yeah, you want the property to look pretty, right? But it's really more emphasis on the functionality of the property because people are not really living there. And it doesn't get banged up as frequently as an apartment. But yeah, that's a good question, man. And also like and going back to the networking thing, like I can underwrite, but I'm not the greatest underwriter, right? It could take me forever, and also my passion's not really in it. But because I'm more of the sales and the marketing guy, and I like to meet people. That's why I mesh well with my partners because if they say it's a go on a property and it's time to raise, I have full faith in them. It's like okay, this let's whip up the investment summary. Let's start attracting investors and it's also vice versa because the sales and marketing is not necessarily their niche, right? So we both just kind of like just offset each other's weaknesses to start accomplishing stuff that, you know, we've never done before.
So I want to go into more the Nine Doors Down brand, right? Can you let people know? You mentioned a little bit, right? Why you name your company Nine Doors Down. And
Yeah.
also talk about right about the program you guys have, right? Because I know you started like a little mentorship or something
Yeah.
for capital raising.
Yeah, man. So Nine Doors Down, it's a reflection off of the very first property we closed, which was the 9 unit property. And at that time, we're still living in LA. We're driving back to LA, and Anthony calls us, was like, "Hey, we need a name for the LLC." And then my wife goes, "This could be a spin-off of the Three Doors Down band. Let's call it Nine Doors Down." And we're like, "Oh, you know, that sounds dope. Let's run with it, right?" And so we ran with it, and then next thing you know, more properties, you know, start to come on our plate, and we still continue to keep the Nine Doors Down name. And then the fund rolls around, and we still keep, now it's called the Nine Doors Down Opportunity Fund. And then as far as the school, so any time that anybody wants to learn like the basics of real estate, I just refer them to, there's MFM, there's RE Mentor, there's like so many multifamily real estate education programs that are out there. I'll always refer them to them. But if it's something that's more focused on just like capital raising, which is like, in my opinion, is like the biggest struggle that a lot of people, when they coming out of these programs, they're finding these amazing deals. They're putting their EMDs down, but there's a large percentage where they lose the EMDs because they couldn't just raise the capital for it. So, we want to teach things such as like branding, social media presence, your website, you know, sales funnels, how to build out your database, so that way if you happen to be a 506B as a boy, you have paper trail to show the SEC. And because we're 506B, we had to be a lot more creative as far as marketing, because we can't divulge the returns or the property or things of that nature. So that's why a lot of the stuff that you see from us is like, if you want to learn more, just DM us, or visit our site, schedule a call, or whatever. But yeah, the capital raising, that's we've had that for about a year now. That's going to be stretched out even further. We're working on a new program, a new company that we're merging with existing partners. We've been working on this since last year, but that's all the Nine Doors Down efforts is all being rolled over into this newer company where we're vertically integrated. We're own the construction, the HR, the credit card processing, the fund portal. We're gonna own it ourselves, and yeah, man. Instead of having to rely on like third parties, we're just start doing it all in house.
Hey, this is Lamar again. Can you
Hey,
talk a
Lamar.
little bit about the advantages and maybe the additional opportunity about raising for a 506B versus a 506C?
Yeah, man. Like if 506C is I think once you get to a certain point, and if you have the market for it, go with 506C, man, because you could advertise your property, you could advertise your returns, right? You could go all in. The only catch is they have to be accredited. So let's as a couples, like that you have to make at least like 300,000, as an individual 250, right? Or your assets, not including your primary residence, what is it, 2 million, I believe it is. So you have to make sure you're in those guidelines. But the reason why we stayed with 506B is because the operator, who owns more than $2 billion of real estate, they started out in Phoenix, they got into Dallas, and now just recently they got into North Carolina. They stayed at 506B. And we were talking to them. I was like, "Why do you guys stay at 506B?" He was like, we're starting to get referrals, and a lot of the people, they're just like maybe a deal or two away from becoming accredited. So they like the idea of helping out the middle class guy get to the next level, while accredited investors could still invest in a deal. And so we kind of like took that on, because we knew if these guys can do it, we can too. You just got to have crafty marketing. Maybe later down the road we'll go into 506C, but right now we like to have that exclusive feel, I guess, to our deals.
We have a question in the chat from Rochelle. Where do you suggest searching for self-storage listings Just commercial brokers? I have heard large companies like to acquire them. So are you competing with the big players in the space?
So the big players, that's actually the exit play. So eventually, if you have like a portfolio of properties, you can now sell it to the REITs, right? So there's public storage, there's Storage One. I mean, there's so many companies that are out there. So that's actually an exit strategy to sell your portfolio to them, and that is definitely a strategy that we have with our partners with our self storage deals. But as far as listings, you may not even find the listings, man. Like this is when you Google self storage. It could be like in Alabama, Connecticut, it could be anywhere, right? But when you start to Google it and start to see if they have a website, and if they don't have a website, that's already a big indicator. Like, okay, you need to get in front of the seller. There's going to be tons of gatekeepers, but you just got to be aggressive of just trying to reach out. It could be once a week, it could be once a month, it could be once a month for the next like 2-3 years. But you've already identified like I need to land this property. You don't even know what the rent. Well, you'll have an idea of what the rent rolls are going to look like because you get to see what they're advertising the rents for like a 10x10 space or 10x12 or even like a 5x7. But and also broker relationships is always huge. Broker relationships or partner up with those that are more experienced. I tend to be more in favor of partner up with those that have already done a few deals under their belt. But that's a great questions, man.
So go ahead, Willie.
Go ahead.
Quick question for you, John. So for those people on the call here that say, "Hey, I want to raise capital," right? They don't know where to start or what to say or who to talk to. What's a little bit of advice that you can share with them?
A lot of times they have reputations already, right? So if you're already starting to think investments, there's a good chance that you have a good reputation at your W-2 or the business that you own. So you already have that network of credit of people that places you on a credibility factor as far as like you yourself as a person. And what I would do is I'll I have this deal, I have this investment opportunity, take a look at it, right? And the first set of investors is always gonna be your friends, relatives, and like coworkers. At least that's always like the first layer of the onion is what I call it. But you can still penetrate that, right? And some of the deals, like say if you do a fund of a fund, like it could be a $30 million deal, but in order for you to get in the deal, if you could just raise $500,000, you're in. And that all it takes is that first property where you're gonna have to get creative. You're gonna have to like really dig deep and try to raise that capital. But once you raise that first one, that's the one that's gonna really start to propel your brand, your operations and whatnot. And that's why we're a big fan of like fund of funds, just to get yourself started. Now I know I have a bunch of fund of fund operators in California. Like that's all they've been doing for the last 5 years. They will never operate anything, and their AUM is up to like 300 million, right? But that doesn't mean you stay in the fund of fund route. You could take your fund and you could still sponsor a deal. You could co GP, you could JV. Heck, even with a fund, man, if you write out your SEC docs properly, you could now dabble into debt funds or raising capital for venture funds. Like it's the sky's the limit. But in order for the first round to really attract investors, you want to tighten up your buy box. This is something that we tell our students. It's something I tell like people at meetups is like, I don't care if you're into like pad split or Airbnbs or hotel conversions, right? You'll attract more investors if you have a very narrow buy box. So if hotel conversions are the only thing that you do, then you reflect the returns just based on that. And you don't want to confuse your investors by bringing on like maybe a multifamily deal or like a 20 portfolio Airbnb, single family property. You want to make sure that it's really, really tight because that widens up your pool. Now, once you get the reputation for one buy box and then you want to entertain maybe something later down the road, like a year or two from now, you already have that reputation and like, hey, let's stretch it out even further. But it gives you a lot of flexibility and options. That's why we're a fan of the fund model. Basically, it's the same as syndication. If you really think about it, the main difference is with syndication is you identify the asset first, then you raise capital, right? Which could be the most anxiety-filled experience for like 30, 60, 90 days, right? And then you have your investor reporting. With the fund, it's slightly reversed. You're always building relationships. You're always raising capital. Your buy box is so small, and you always you embed it with your investors. Like, hey, when we announce a deal, these are the minimum returns: 1.5 to 2x equity multiple, 12 to 15 IRR, 6 to 8% pref, bare minimum. The deals we bring on, we know it's already going to go north of that. By the time you announce the deal, they'll be more comfortable and more educated to invest in that deal. So build the relationships / raising capital, then you identify asset, and then investor reporting.
I know Laura, you raised your hand. Do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, he kind of answered it, but I was just wondering what a fund to fund is. Like, I'm an MFM, so they
Yeah.
teach syndication, and I don't quite understand fund to fund.
So with syndications, you have your LPs, right? So, some deals are, $50,000 individual investments. Some could be $100K, right? Operators, you start to see more and more of them wanting to build relationships with fund managers, because if one point of contact could bring in 500,000, a million, heck, even $250,000, that is one person that operator just has to communicate with. Now that fund manager has to relay the investment reporting, all the distributions down, K1s down to their investors. So a fund of a fund is an LP who's bringing in more capital, but you get to negotiate higher returns that are just about as equivalent as a co-GP, minus the responsibilities of the day-to-day management. So with us, I think for every active deal that we do, we'll get into like three or four fund of a fund scenarios, because we know that our capital is always going north, and as well as our investors. Because in our experience, we could send out an LOI. We just sent that LOI out several weeks ago. We're still waiting. We were supposed to find out last week if we got it or not, but we still don't know. But there's been scenarios when we didn't even know we got accepted or rejected 4 to 6 months later down the road. Those 4 to 6 months, you have all these reputable operators like, dude, I could have just raised 250K, 500K, and I could have grown my capital. And then part of that pot, you could toss in your own capital if you wanted to, or not. It's all up to you of how much velocity you want to use. But fund of a fund is more, I guess, it's more of a glamorized, more profitable individual LP.
And then we have Carla here who has her hand raised. Please come off mute and ask your question.
Yes. Hi, Carla.
Okay. Listening to your answer for fund to fund, and like I said, as Laura, I'm part of MFM. There's so much information out here, because when I heard about you can create a fund, this could be a source where if you have investors and they're ready to give you their money, this is a place where you can tell them to go and put their money in, even though this money will be used for the actual property or whatever you're doing it with. Am I understanding this correctly?
That is correct. Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. When I hear fund to fund, it sounded like this was something completely different.
Yeah, you're kind of a more of a central location for a source of capital. Put it that way.
Right.
Now, fund to fund, it doesn't mean just LP. Like you could co-GP. You could do just depending on how the deal is structured. But a lot of vertically integrated operators where they own the construction, the HR, the whole nine. They don't necessarily need co-GPs, but they're going to give very similar co-GP returns to those fund managers that could bring in that capital. So it's not for everyone, right? But it's an option that's out there, that's becoming more and more popular, and we've relied heavily on it, for a few years now, even before it became so big in the last 8 months or so.
Okay. No, I just wanted to make sure I understood it correctly.
Yeah. So if you have a relationship with a really strong operator that they've done multiple exits, they're doing multiple deals a year, they have the reputation, and if you know that hey, with my circle of influence that I could raise this $500,000, that's when you start to think okay, maybe the fund of a fund approach is appropriate, or maybe I take this 500K and maybe I just joint venture on something that's 3 million or whatnot.
Okay.
Oh, I see Marichelle in the house.
Thank you.
Dang. I haven't seen Yannick and Marichelle in a minute. And she got the NDD hat. What's up, Marichelle?
Hey guys, I just wanted to come on here, show some love to my cousin John on the West Coast.
Yep, yep.
Been a while. It's been a while, guys. I see a lot of new of the MFM students on here. I just want you to know that John is the one who actually taught us about Funds of Fun. That was what, 2 years
No,
ago,
no,
John?
it can't be Marichelle, was it?
That was
No.
like 2 years ago. That was when we were doing Orlando. When we were raising on
Oh,
a,
yeah.
oh no, even before that, we were doing that portfolio in Missouri, I think, right?
No, I think
So
it was
I don't know.
Orlando.
It's been a while.
Orlando
It
with
might have been Orlando,
yeah,
yeah.
with Mahad
Yes,
Williams.
yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, John is great, guys. He's a fantastic resource. Him and Anthony have been doing this a long time. I totally vouch for them. I know you guys, a lot of you in MFM, trust me. Um, so I will say he does the right thing by people and he's always open and willing to share. If you guys ever go out to Vegas, go to his meetups. He's always got stacked lineup of people. Um, if you're looking to maybe learn more about Fun to Fun, he has a great partner that we actually referred to that we were going to use, A Vester. So just drop his name, you'll get the friends and family discount there too. So I just want to say I love always like hearing what Nine Doors Down is doing. I think you guys do a fantastic job. You bring so many people along with you. Um, big fan of the fact that they are 506B. You guys know it's a very exclusive industry that we work in. So the more that we can bring others with us and help them kind of usher the entryway into our space, we should always be finding those opportunities when you put people in the middle of what you do and you do it for the right reasons. You're always going to attract, right? You're always going to attract capital, guys. You're always going to attract deals. So just wanted to come on here, show some love to
Thanks,
everyone.
Marichelle. Love you. Love you.
National
Love you.
Empire,
Tell Yannick
Nine
I said
Doors
what's up.
Down, you guys. Will do, guys. Have a wonderful night.
Good night, Marichelle. That was
So
nice of her. That was a pleasant surprise.
Did you have that staged?
No, dude, I haven't talked to Yannick and Marichelle in probably several. I think it's got to be several months now since the last time I talked to them.
I'm just messing with you. We have Tiago here who has his hand raised. Feel free to come off mute and ask your question. And Renee, we have your question next here. Tiago, are you there?
Yeah. Can you guys hear me? I'm trying to put the camera on, but for some reason it's not coming up.
Yeah,
I can
we
hear you.
you, brother.
All right, good. Hey, John, appreciate it coming out and educating all of us in different aspects of the real estate. More and more as we go to, different real estate meetings, we always, hear the fund-to-fund management. And your friend Rochelle was speaking about you giving a reference to someone that can teach or give more details. Is something that you do yourself, or is your partner are more specific to that?
Yeah, we actually we coach that ourselves at School of Nine Doors Down, and the new company that we're building. So we're gonna be owning and operating the fund portal itself. But for anyone that is committed to raising $2 million, we're gonna pay for the SEC legal documents to be created, which they could range anywhere from like $5,000 to $10,000 or so. But in order for us, like we have a saying, like this new company, it's built by fund managers for fund managers. Like we're talking about press of like 10% up, anywhere from like 10 to 12 splits. We're probably going to do at least a 90-10 split for our fund managers. We're still going to take individual investors, but with that, for anyone who's really interested in launching their fund, we could actually pay for that as long as the 2 million, the first 2 million is raised for our deal. But after that 2 million, you could take your fund and do whatever you want with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there is two specific. There is a specific fund, and that is the blind fund.
Yeah.
So which one you're talking about now?
So we operate a customizable. Well, right currently it's a customizable fund, and so a blind fund is people inject, an individual probably injects, $100,000, $200,000, $50,000. They don't know exactly which deal it's gonna go to. The returns will, more than likely will be there, but we don't operate that. So But what we do currently is called a customizable fund. So even for as one as an investor comes in for as low as like $50,000, and if we're offering more than one property or an investment opportunity or maybe three, they can take that capital and they can split it up either 2 ways or 3 ways, or just put it exclusively on just one deal. So, and the returns are still deal specific. So if one deal has it's underwriting at, at least a 17 IR, but has a 1.5x multiple, but then you have property B that's like IRs at at 15, but the equity multiples now is like 2.1 or 2.2. That investor will reap those benefits off of that, off of each property. So in essence, they can diversify within the multifamily or self-storage asset class. And then, but on the future one that we do, it's the very first PPM. It's always got to be for our deal, but we're gonna write it out in a way where it's gonna be an ever I wouldn't say an evergreen fund, but they could raise up to like 20 to 25 million. Whether it's hopefully they want to continue to raise with us, but they could still raise for their own deals or another operator's deals.
So even the customized, you can do several deals on the same fund.
Yeah, that's we operate a debt fund on our fund. Yeah, so we do gap lending out here in Las Vegas. So, and again, we're working with another reputable operator who just focuses on high end flips. So out here in Vegas, high end is like $600,000 to $700,000 homes, and so we do the gap lending on it. And that operator, gives us like a 20% return. And then from there, we're able to give our investors anywhere from like 12 to 12 to, it could be 10, 12, 14% returns, while we get to keep the EBITDA for ourselves.
Spread.
Yeah, the spread, exactly. Yeah. But it creates a lot of flexibility, man, because it creates buying power for you.
Yeah, I see. We're I think most of us here are syndicators or some type of a syndication.
Yeah.
And the fund to fund is just, it seems that it runs parallel to the syndication, but it gives more freedom to other different transactions in real estate.
Here's another advantage that I didn't think of when I first got into it. My investors, when they go into an operator individually, they don't make as much money as if they were to go into my fund. Because I'm getting, I could negotiate up to, it could be 80-20 split or a 90-10 split. Prefs are now 8-9%. Whereas individually, if you go into a deal, a lot of these deals, the prefs could be like 6 to 7, but the splits are only gonna be like a 70-30. So the operators, they actually want us to tell our investors that you actually make more money going through a fund like 9 doors down. And for the operator, it's less headache because they could just contact me or Anthony for, hey, I've had this opportunity. Here's some returns, and they just issue 1K1 to us, and then from there we disperse it using our fund to each individual investor. And another power is you keep your investors anonymous, guys. That's a big thing. Operators, there's no fault to them. They want to close a deal no matter what. So if if you're coming in as a co-GP, right? And I've seen this countless of times, leaning on you for like 150,000, 200, whatever the dollar amount is, right? You're raising 2-3 months, but you're unsuccessful. You tell the operator, hey, I don't think I can make it. Then the operator's gonna ask you, well, let me try to can I try to call your investors? And say if you just say it just takes that one or two investors to invest directly with the operator. Now that operator, they may not remember 5 years from now when that deal exits. So when the deal exits, they're gonna contact your investor directly, like, hey, do you want to roll this over into the next opportunity, or do you want to, or do you want to cash out, right, and do it yourself? So those are the things that you got to start to think about, because it's no fault to the operator, but in order for you to grow your brand as a fund, you want to keep your investors anonymous from the operator.
Yeah, so you don't want them reinvesting on somebody else's project that is not yours and you're not benefiting from.
Yeah, on the flip side, I know the operator that I work with, there's been times when I'd hop on a webinar, and we're talking about our deal, and I have the operator on, and it never fails, man. You're always gonna have one or two people that's gonna bypass me, try to contact the operator, but the operator always says, I would rather deal with one decision maker who's in charge of millions of dollars rather than chasing down individual investors at like 50K or 100K at a time.
Good. John, what is the info to reach out for you for the fund discussion here?
Yeah, you know what? I think Willie put it in the chat.
Did you really?
So, yeah, let me here, let me find the link to our calendar as
Oh, there
well.
we go. Now he did.
Yeah, here I'll do the I'll put the calendar one too. Give me 1 second here.
Oh, 818, San
Yeah,
Fernando Valley.
yeah.
That's where I'm
What
from.
really? What part? I was I graduated from CSUN.
Me too. I went to Valley College and I transferred to
Uh,
finance to CISA.
no way. Yeah, dude. I lived in West Hills, man, before moving out to Vegas.
Wow, what a small world. I'm in
Yeah.
Texas now. You're in Vegas, and we're from the same town.
Yep. You still got the 818 number?
Yeah, I got the 661 from
661.
Valencia.
Okay. Santa Clarita, Valencia. Yeah, that's where Anthony's at. He's in Santa Clarita.
Yeah.
Small world, man.
Yeah, we definitely will connect. Appreciate it for the valuable time, John.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a pleasure. This is fun for me.
So, John, one final question, man. What do you do for fun, bro?
Man, I like to golf. I like to DJ. You know, I do a lot of turntablist stuff. I throw a lot of b-boy youth events out here in Las Vegas. So a lot of church activities as well. But yeah, just a lot of things. Just yeah, golf, DJing, and doing events with kids. I would say, and also hanging out with my kids. And as of late, pickleball. I kind of picked that up a few weeks ago, which is ironically I thought it was pretty. I think it's pretty fun.
Awesome, awesome. So we're coming towards the top of the hour here. Thank you everyone for joining on. But before we get off, John, if there's a piece of advice or a lesson that you learned throughout your career here, right, in real estate, do you mind sharing that with all of us and what that is and what you learned from it?
Welcome losses, because you learn a lot from your losses. And I think too many people out there are always looking for the perfect scenario. They always want to hit the home run, but I think those losses and those moments where you get your teeth kicked in, you become a much better investor. So be welcome to it. Don't shy away from it. In other words, just take action, man. Take action. Be around others with the same frequency, with the same mindset, and you know, if you don't have that village, create that village. Throw your own meetups.
Awesome, John. Thank you so much. I know that Willie and we got a lot of great insights from you. I know everyone on this call, super interactive. They had a lot of great questions and also learned a lot. So appreciate you, John, jumping on and sharing your story and your lessons with us. With that being said, I'm gonna conclude the call. I'll shut off the recording and then we'll open up some breakout rooms so we can network a little bit. I'm not sure if you have a couple more minutes, John, but that's something
Yeah,
that
I
we
can hang
like
out.
doing.
Yeah,
Awesome, awesome.
absolutely.